Anonymous author presents the audiobook, Build a Mind That Generates Financial Fortune. Chapter 1. Wealth and Mind. Achieving wealth may seem like a distant dream, but the reality is that many millionaires weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouths. They built their fortune through consistent habits and smart financial decisions. The most surprising thing is that these habits are often simple, practical, and completely applicable to your daily life. Adopting them can put you on the path to a real transformation in your financial situation. Having skills, intelligence, and a good attitude are valuable qualities that can undoubtedly help you advance. However, on their own, they don't guarantee financial success. There's a telling statistic. Less than 20% of the world's population holds more than 80% of the world's wealth. Is this a coincidence? It isn't. The key difference lies in the habits these successful people have cultivated over time. For those who have achieved high levels of success, these practices have become a natural part of their daily routine. They apply them so regularly that they barely notice they are doing anything out of the ordinary. The extraordinary thing is that these principles are so accessible that any determined person can learn and apply them. The cornerstone of this entire miraculous process is the mind. The mind, that mysterious department where ideas go on vacation, sometimes get lost, and occasionally throw unexpected parties. Beyond being a simple thing that thinks, intentional spelling mistake, to show that even the mind has its lazy days. It's the set of skills that allows us to do everything from remembering where we put our keys to philosophizing about the meaning of life while washing dishes. Etymologically, mind comes from the Latin mens, mentis, which basically means what makes us human and not, say, lucky stones. The ancients viewed it as the intellectual power of the soul, but today we know it's more like a theater where the brain is the stage, the neurons are the actors, some more dramatic than others, and the emotions are the audience that sometimes throws tomatoes. What does the mind do? A summary with a touch of unintentional humor. Perception. When your eyes see a plate of food and your nose smells burnt. Spoiler alert, it's your dinner. Thoughts. From what am I doing with my life, to why does bread always fall on the buttered side? Awareness. That awkward moment when you realize you're wearing your shirt inside out, in public. Memory. Where you store everything from your grandma's birthday to that catchy song you can't get out of your head. Sorry, you're just remembering it now. Imagination. The culprit that makes you think you could win an Oscar in the shower. Emotions. From overwhelming happiness to the did I really wake up for this? Mondays. Volition, or, in English, willpower. The kind you promise to use tomorrow to exercise again. If you're observant, you'll have noticed that most people turn to prayer only when all else has failed. At other times, their prayers are reduced to rituals of empty words, devoid of true meaning. It is a fact that, when many turn to prayer as a last resort, they do so with their minds dominated by fear and doubt. These emotions, when they permeate the subconscious, are transmitted to the infinite intelligence. And it is precisely this energy of fear and uncertainty that the infinite intelligence receives and, consequently, acts upon. If you pray for something, but while praying you harbor the fear of not receiving it, or you suspect that your prayer will not be answered, then your prayer will have been in vain. However, when prayer has borne fruit, when you have received what you prayed for, reflect for a moment. Remember the state of mind you were in while praying. You will then see, beyond a doubt, that what is presented here goes beyond mere theory. The process by which you communicate with infinite intelligence bears some similarity to the transmission of radio waves. If you understand how radio works, you'll know that sound cannot travel through the air until it is transformed into vibrations imperceptible to the human ear. In a radio station, the voice is captured and modified, raising its frequency millions of times. Only then can it be transmitted through space. Once transformed, this energy, which was originally sound, reaches the receivers, where it is converted back to its original vibration so we can hear it. Similarly, the subconscious mind acts as an intermediary. It translates our prayers into a language that infinite intelligence understands, presents the message, and receives the response, whether in the form of a clear plan or an inspiring idea that guides us toward what we ask for. Understanding this principle will help you understand why words repeated mechanically, without conviction or faith, will never serve as a true bridge between the human mind and infinite intelligence. Common sense suggests that success is within everyone's reach, a comforting idea, but, in many cases, a dangerous one. The more success is pursued with excessive finesse, the less likely it seems to be to achieve it. This observation reveals how the world tends to reward those who advance with incisive assertiveness, while the most cautious and prudent often remain on the sidelines, watching the frenetic pace of other people's ambition. This perception resonates especially among those who still aspire to reconcile ethical principles with personal advancement. Influenced by simplistic self-help manuals and superficial motivational messages, many choose to believe in an inherently fair system, in which kindness is always rewarded and moderate effort inevitably leads to success. However, those who dare to question these prevailing narratives soon discover the fragility of this comforting promise. When analyzing the nuances of the human experience in competitive contexts, it becomes clear that excessive politeness can become an obstacle, whether in the professional environment, in complex interpersonal relationships, or in the search for social recognition. The constant concern with avoiding conflict and the fear of setting clear boundaries often translate into missed opportunities, unfinished projects, and, ultimately, the bitter frustration of seeing ideals vanish. It's almost as if the very fabric of reality were woven from competition and firm assertiveness. In that scenario, soft voices tend to get lost amid the clamor of those moving forward with determination. Offering help or acting with excessive delicacy can be interpreted as a sign of vulnerability, and a career built solely on consideration and tenderness seems to compromise the viability of advancement. Although qualities such as kindness and benevolence are exalted in theory, pursuing the path to success with only these qualities can mean facing life without essential tools. In the face of great challenges, firmness, no matter how rigorous it may seem, proves to be an indispensable resource. Many face this dilemma. They genuinely desire to act with kindness, but find that boundless kindness can be impractical in highly competitive environments. True power does not arise from passivity, but from a relentless inner strength in the pursuit of one's own goals. Power is not about dominating others, but about the ability to transcend oneself, shape one's own existence, and influence the world in meaningful ways. This power emanates not from complacency, but from a firm, directed, and energetic will. Firmness can be understood as a precise instrument that eliminates the excesses of self-indulgence, inertia, and self-sabotage. It is the ability to accept life in its entirety, with its challenges and its beauties, facing the struggle as an engine of personal growth. It is not about retreating from obstacles, but rather transforming them into steps towards self-mastery. We could compare it to a river that, in order to reach the ocean, doesn't stop at rocks or mountains. It transforms them, surrounds them, or plunges into impetuous cascades, driven by an inexhaustible vital energy. This strength is not a gift reserved for a privileged few, but a skill that can be cultivated and strengthened through constant self-discipline and the habit of pushing one's limits. This steadfastness lies in the ability to maintain a clear focus on the most essential goals, resist distractions from the easy path, and persevere despite fatigue, discouragement, and opposition. In essence, steadfastness is the art of directing vital energy with precision and intensity, like a beam of light focused on the exact point where one seeks to build something valuable and lasting. From this perspective, true power is not a passively received gift, but a difficult personal achievement. Genuine power is found not in softness, but in unyielding determination. History confirms this view. The great conquerors of humanity were not necessarily the kindest or most accommodating. It is important to reconsider the idealized image of fairy tale heroes, benevolent princes who rule with tenderness and gentleness. Historical reality presents us with a much more complex picture. When looking at the great founders of empires, visionary leaders who shaped cultures, and bold innovators who challenged convention, one discerns a pattern. Conquest, at its core, was rarely a process tinged with docility. Consider, for example, Julius Caesar, whose ambition and rigorous strategy paved the way for the Roman Empire. Even in contemporary times, visionaries who revolutionized entire industries did so through a stubborn determination that, at the time, many considered reckless. These conquerors, each in their own context, personified relentlessness in the pursuit of their dreams. Not that they were devoid of noble qualities or moments of empathy, but history remembers them, above all, as resolute agents of change. They were willing to make difficult decisions, sacrifice immediate comfort in favor of more ambitious goals, and face resistance with unwavering persistence. It seems as if the very nature of conquest demands steadfastness, the ability to overcome great challenges, and a will capable of overcoming the inertia of the world. Furthermore, it demands a strategic approach that is not diluted by divergent opinions or emotional appeals, which could divert the conqueror from his purpose. In this context, kindness, understood as a constant inclination to please everyone and avoid conflict at all costs, can become a brake that hinders the advancement of ambition and the realization of great projects. Every day, around 80,000 thoughts pass through our minds. But have you ever stopped to consider what thoughts really are? And what happens in our brains when we think? We must be honest, we can't answer this question definitively, as there are still many mysteries surrounding how the brain works. However, we do know several pieces of this fascinating puzzle that we can discuss. Our brain contains approximately 100 billion neuronal cells, a number similar to the number of stars in the Milky Way. The most abundant neurons are composed of dendrites, a cell body, an axon, and axon terminals. Neurons are similar to thousands of tiny batteries capable of generating electricity, although, unlike a conventional battery, they do so not through the movement of electrons, but rather through the displacement of ions, electrically charged atoms. In a resting state, the exterior of neurons has a positive charge due to the abundance of sodium ions, while the interior maintains a negative charge due to the presence of negatively charged proteins associated with potassium ions, which are also positive. This difference generates a membrane potential of approximately -65 millivolts. This would be its off state, so to speak. But how does a neuron go from resting to firing? The process is fascinating. On the dendrites, there are receptors that bind to neurotransmitters released by other neurons. This binding causes the opening of ion channels that allow sodium to enter, making the interior of the neuron more positive. If enough sodium enters, and the charge reaches -55 millivolts, even more sodium channels open, and the neuron fires. This phenomenon is called an action potential and generates an electrical signal that travels along the neuron's axon, opening more sodium channels in its wake, like a wave of enthusiasm in a stadium. When this electrical signal reaches the axon terminals, neurotransmitters are released into the synaptic gap, the synapse, and bind to the receptors of the next neuron, restarting the process. Thus, a chemical signal is transformed into an electrical signal and back into a chemical signal. Some neurons, such as those that control reflexes, transmit electrical signals so quickly that this transformation barely occurs. Each neuron can be connected to many others by synapses and can receive several neurotransmitters simultaneously. Some neurotransmitters open sodium channels, causing the neuron to fire. Others open chloride ion channels, negative, inhibiting firing. In a very simplified way, it is similar to the binary code of computers, electrical impulses, ones, and their absence, zeros, that, combined, generate instructions. Of course, in our brain the system is infinitely more complex, with numerous neurotransmitters interacting at the same time. The electrical activity of groups of neurons forms brain waves, repetitive, rhythmic, and synchronized patterns of frequency and amplitude. These oscillations facilitate communication between neurons and are modulated by certain neurotransmitters. 5 main types of brain waves are currently recognized: alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and theta. Each wave type has been associated with different mental states. For example, delta waves predominate during deep sleep, while theta waves are common when we let our minds wander. Recent studies have detected the appearance of alpha waves in the prefrontal cortex when we switch from one thought to another. Furthermore, alterations in these oscillations allow for the diagnosis of diseases such as epilepsy. The curious thing is that, although the patterns are similar even among different species, they also present such marked individual differences that it is believed they could be as unique as a fingerprint. Neurons group together to form circuits or pathways, many of which function like highways that rapidly transport electrical impulses throughout the brain. These routes are essential for the functioning of specific neural networks that are activated depending on the activity we are performing. The default network turns on when we think about the future or when our mind wanders. There are also control, attention, salience, motor, and visual networks. And what does all this have to do with thoughts? Well, everything. Our thoughts, perceptions, feelings, emotions, and memories arise from neuronal activity. Perception is tied to a specific stimulus, making it easy to trace how and where it's processed in the brain. However, the mechanism by which we convert electrochemical signals into language, symbols, and thoughts remains a mystery. Some theories hold that thoughts are the result of retrieving multiple stored memories. However, if a brain were kept alive in a laboratory, it would be capable of thinking, but those thoughts would not necessarily be connected to reality. This suggests that in addition to the brain, our body and environment also play a role in the formation of thoughts. For example, it has been observed that people who, due to the use of botulinum toxin, Botox, have limitations in gesturing, take longer to identify emotions such as sadness or anger in others. In another study, people were asked to estimate the steepness of a hill. Those with better physical fitness perceived it as less steep compared to those who didn't exercise or were carrying a heavy backpack. These experiments reveal how our bodily state can directly influence our perception and thinking. And would it be possible to read thoughts? Since thoughts have spatial representation in the brain, this could be feasible in the future. Since 2011, projects have been working on decoding mental images. First, a person observes images while their brain activity is recorded using magnetic resonance imaging. Then, using only that data, an attempt is made to recreate the images seen. So far, they have managed to reproduce fragments of videos, photographs, and even some dreams. The subconscious is the part of the mind that operates below the level of full awareness. That is, it functions beneath the surface of conscious attention and is not directly accessible to our conscious mind. It was a term originally coined by Sigmund Freud to refer to aspects of the mind that contain unconscious desires, memories, and experiences, but that profoundly influence personality, emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. For modern psychology and neuroscience, the subconscious is understood as a set of mental processes that store information, memories, learning, and emotions that are not present in immediate consciousness, but that guide our reactions and decisions without us realizing it. 156, for example, the limbic system, involved in memory and emotions, operates largely subconsciously, generating automatic emotional responses. The subconscious is also responsible for the automation of learned skills and behaviors, such as walking or driving, which are performed without conscious thought, a phenomenon known as implicit learning or procedural memory. It functions as a hard drive where data accumulated throughout life is stored, including beliefs, traumatic experiences, and behavioral patterns that can influence decision-making and the way of acting, often without the person being able to rationally explain their motives. 57. Although the term subconscious has been displaced in academic psychology by concepts such as unconscious and preconscious, it remains widely used in everyday language to refer to those inaccessible or difficult to reach mental contents that influence our minds and behavior. To access the subconscious, techniques such as hypnosis, positive visualizations, or guided dreaming are used, which seek to explore and modify habits or beliefs stored in this part of the mind. The subconscious is much more receptive to thought impulses when they are imbued with a feeling or emotion than when they arise solely from the rational part of the mind. In fact, there is considerable evidence to support the idea that only emotionally charged thoughts have a true impact on the subconscious mind. It is widely recognized that emotions or feelings govern the behavior of most people. If we accept that the subconscious responds more quickly and easily to thought impulses accompanied by emotion, we will understand the importance of familiarizing ourselves with the main human emotions. There are 7 great positive impulses and 7 great negative impulses. While negative impulses tend to be automatically integrated into thought impulses, thus ensuring their access to the subconscious, positive impulses must be deliberately incorporated through the conscious practice of autosuggestion into those thoughts we wish to imprint within ourselves. We can compare the role of these emotions in thinking to the function of yeast in bread dough. They're the vital element that transforms thought impulses from a passive to an active state. This explains why it is much more effective to act on thoughts imbued with emotion than on those born of merely cold, logical reasoning. You are preparing to influence and direct the inner audience of your subconscious mind in order to convey to it the fervent desire to achieve financial prosperity, transforming that longing into its monetary equivalent. Therefore, it is essential that you learn the correct way to approach this inner audience. You must speak to it in its own language, that of emotions and feelings, otherwise your message might not be received or heeded. The 7 great positive impulses. The impulse of desire, the impulse of faith, the impulse of love, the impulse of sex, the impulse of enthusiasm, the impulse of romance, the impulse of hope. The 7 great negative impulses to be avoided. The impulse of fear, the impulse of jealousy, the impulse of hatred, the impulse of revenge, the impulse of greed, the impulse of superstition, and the impulse of anger. The mind cannot accommodate both positive and negative emotions simultaneously. At every moment, one or the other dominates. Our responsibility lies in ensuring that positive emotions are the guiding force of our thoughts. To achieve this, the law of habit will be your ally. Cultivate the constant practice of applying and strengthening these uplifting emotions. Over time, they will completely occupy your mind, leaving no room for negative ones. This process requires commitment. Only by following these guidelines with discipline and attention will you be able to truly master your subconscious. Remember, just one negative emotion rooted in it can block any possibility of receiving its constructive guidance. More than 4 decades ago, a discovery was made that would make any scientist with a sense of humor stand on end. The human brain is like a radio station. Yes, you read that right. Not only do we pick up signals like that device your grandfather set up to listen to music, but we also emit thoughts like a pirate radio station. Our creative imagination is our mental super receiver, the one in charge of tuning into the brain waves that others are transmitting. Although, be careful, we don't always want to know what our neighbor on the 3rd floor is thinking, do we? How does this modern telepathy work? Imagination is like the brain's Bluetooth. It connects your conscious mind to 4 mysterious sources of thoughts, which, for now, we'll continue to call sources so as not to spoil the suspense. Emotions are volume. If you're happy, angry, or excited, you increase the signal intensity. But be careful. Negative emotions are like feedback from a microphone. They can make you mentally deaf. Accelerated vibrations. When your mind is on high frequency, say, mentally dancing to the beat of your hits, you're more receptive to ideas floating through the ether. Your brain doesn't just think. It's a mental wave influencer. So try to send out good vibes and always tune into the optimistic frequency. Because, let's be honest, no one wants to get stuck on the bad mood channel. Change the station. The energy linked to the sexual drive tops the list of the most intense human emotions, at least in terms of its motivating power and emotional depth. When the brain is stimulated by this vital force, its functioning becomes noticeably more agile and dynamic than when this emotion remains dormant or absent. The conscious transformation of this energy into a higher form, a process known as transmutation, results in such a heightened level of thinking that the creative imagination becomes extremely receptive to new ideas and inspirations. In this accelerated state of mind, the brain not only becomes more sensitive to the thoughts emitted by other minds, but also imbues its own thoughts with a special energy. This vibration is essential for the subconscious to register and act upon them. The subconscious can be compared to a thought-transmitting station, a channel through which mental vibrations are projected into the world. The creative imagination, for its part, acts as a receiver tuned to the higher frequencies of thought. Along with these key elements, the subconscious and the creative imagination, we must include the principle of autosuggestion. The latter acts as the mechanism that sets in motion the entire machinery of mental communication. Through autosuggestion, it is possible to activate and direct your mental transmitter to emit clear and powerful messages to your own mind and to the universe. The instructions in the chapter on autosuggestion offer detailed guidance on how to transform a burning desire into its concrete equivalent, such as a financial goal. Operating your mental transmitter is not a complex process, but it does require commitment to three essential principles: the subconscious, creative imagination, and autosuggestion. These pillars must be used together every time you want to activate this powerful internal tool. Always remember that everything begins with a desire, a clear, defined, and passionate longing that, when channeled correctly, has the power to shape reality. Chapter 2. Why can small changes transform big realities? How many times have you decided to go to the gym, eat healthy, or save money? The truth is, we all struggle with change. But how do we acquire good habits, according to science? Habits are made up of three elements: trigger, the signal that starts the behavior; behavior, the action itself; reward, the benefit obtained. For example, trigger, you're hungry; behavior, you look for food; reward, you satisfy your appetite. The problem arises when a bad habit, or the lack of a good one, affects our health, relationships, or goals. But changing isn't easy. What do the experts say? There are many conflicting theories. Some recommend radical changes to see quick results. Others suggest small steps to achieve lasting change. Some say, focus on the goal, while others insist, change the system, not the objective. Set a schedule versus be flexible. It's confusing, especially when we hear about the mysterious willpower. The bonbon experiment. Some time ago, researchers conducted a study with children around the age of 4. They were left alone with a chocolate and told that if they didn't eat it, they would receive an additional one later. Only a third resisted the temptation. One girl even tried eating only the filling to hide it. Years later, it was observed that those who postponed gratification tended to be more successful. This is known as self-control. Does willpower run out? Roy Baumeister conducted a famous experiment with adults. One group went 3 hours without food and was then put in a room with radishes and freshly baked cookies. Some were only allowed to eat radishes, others, cookies. They were then asked to solve an unsolvable riddle. Result: those who resisted the cookies gave up the riddle sooner. This suggested that willpower is like a muscle. It gets tired, but can be strengthened. However, recent studies have challenged this theory, ego depletion, as some participants showed a placebo effect. Today, there is still no consensus on how it actually works. What we do know: the prefrontal cortex, responsible for self-control, is fragile and is affected by stress, sleep, or fear. Relying on willpower alone isn't enough. Socioeconomic and emotional factors also play a role. The key is to avoid temptation. The children who didn't eat the candy distracted themselves by playing or looking away. One of the most effective ways to strengthen our willpower is, paradoxically, to minimize temptations. Avoiding the trigger is much easier than resisting it once it's present. For example, if you want to focus during work hours, you can use an app that temporarily blocks social media. Do you want to stop eating sugar? Avoid the candy aisle at the supermarket. It's more productive to reduce contact with what tempts us than to try to resist it through willpower. When it's not possible to avoid the trigger and you find it difficult to change the behavior, there is another alternative: transforming the reward. Not all of our actions become habits. Our brain selects which behaviors to repeat based on the reward we received the previous time. However, it's not always our rational side that decides. It's the more primitive mind, sometimes called the monkey mind, that evaluates and quickly scores people, places, and actions. This part of the brain focuses on immediate survival and seeks quick rewards, not necessarily long-term benefits. Therefore, it's not unusual for them to prefer foods high in fat or sugar. Although they were once key to survival, today they represent a path to progressive health deterioration. Habits are maintained or reinforced when we continue to associate that immediate reward with something positive. But if psychologist B.F. Skinner managed to teach pigeons to play ping pong using rewards, we too can apply this principle to our personal development. Psychiatrist and neuroscientist Judson Brewer has discovered a very interesting approach: mindful meditation. During habit formation and maintenance, the default mode network, that same primitive mind, is the most active. Practicing mindfulness reduces its activity. With some training, Dr. Brewer suggests that his patients, instead of reacting automatically, observe what they feel when they repeat the habit they want to change. He suggests asking themselves with curiosity, "What am I feeling? Is this really rewarding?" Although it sounds unusual, this simple practice reshapes reward perception and has helped people overcome behaviors such as smoking, impulsive eating, or reacting to stress with unhealthy habits. You can also apply this strategy to the habits you want to acquire. If there's a task you find tedious or simply tend to forget, you can add a reward to make it more appealing. Of course, it's important to be creative so as not to fall into traps like, "I deserve a sweet treat after exercise," which can sabotage your goal. A better idea would be, for example, to allow yourself to listen to your favorite podcast only when you exercise, enjoy a cup of coffee while working on an important project, or indulge in a movie only after studying. This type of strategy is known as the Premack principle. An activity you enjoy and do frequently can serve as motivation for one you find more difficult, as long as the first occurs after the second. Plus, just anticipating something pleasurable releases dopamine, and this neurotransmitter can become linked to the new habit you're forming, making it more attractive and sustainable. And what about setting specific times and places for your new habits? In an experiment conducted with Google employees, monetary rewards were offered to encourage exercise. One group was assigned a fixed time, which they chose themselves, and the other was given complete freedom to decide when to go. Interestingly, those without a specific schedule were the ones who exercised more frequently. This shows that while having a routine helps, flexibility also plays an important role, especially since life doesn't always follow a plan. Creating or changing a habit requires consistency and adaptability. But the most important thing is that the process be conscious and personal. Ask yourself questions like, "What could go wrong? Why have I failed before?" This will allow you to anticipate obstacles and adjust your environment to facilitate change. For example, you can lay out your workout clothes the night before, or turn off the TV if you need to focus. You can also track your progress, and on days when you're feeling low on energy, simply set a goal for yourself. Put on your workout clothes and stretch for 2 minutes. Sometimes, that initial step is all it takes to keep going. Above all, ask yourself, "Why do I want to change?" That why will be your internal driving force. We live in a world saturated with advice about what we should do. Eat 5 different fruits a day, drink 2 liters of water, get some sun, exercise, meditate, read, play an instrument, dance, tidy the house, talk to our loved ones, hug, and all that every day. While many of these suggestions are valuable, it's impossible to change everything at once, and we often don't have the time. Reflect on which habits you'd really like to change, which ones come from you, and which ones are influenced by others. Choose consciously and start with just one. The most important thing is that the habit makes sense to you. The idea that small changes can generate profound transformations in our lives and the world at large is one of the most powerful, yet underestimated, concepts. They seem like mere insignificant, almost imperceptible gestures, but upon closer examination, these small adjustments have the potential to unleash extraordinary results. From a psychological, scientific, and philosophical perspective, we can understand how and why these changes can have such a profound impact. One of the simplest yet most profound principles that explains how small changes can transform realities is the concept of the compound effect. This principle is based on the gradual accumulation of small actions that, while seemingly insignificant on their own, multiply and generate exponential change over time. The clearest example of this concept is personal finance. If a person saves only a small amount of money each day, they likely won't see large immediate results. However, at the end of a year, that small saving adds up to a significant amount. If we add compound interest to this, the money continues to grow, and the final impact is much greater than one could have initially anticipated. This principle applies not only to finances, but to all aspects of life. If, for example, a person dedicates 30 minutes a day to exercise, they likely won't notice an immediate transformation in their body or health. But if they remain consistent, that repeated effort will result in a significant improvement in their physical and mental well-being. This seemingly simple process has a cumulative effect that leads to remarkably large results. The concept of the butterfly effect, borrowed from chaos theory, reminds us that in complex systems, such as nature, a small initial variation can have enormous consequences. According to this theory, a small change in the initial conditions of a system can generate dramatic differences in its evolution. This concept is fundamental to understanding how a small gesture or decision can trigger far-reaching events and changes in the future. In the context of human life, the butterfly effect can be observed in seemingly trivial decisions that, over time, bring about radical change. Consider something as simple as choosing to attend a party where you meet someone who later becomes a close friend, a partner, or even a business associate. That initial decision may not seem momentous, but the ramifications of that action can be enormous, changing the course of a person's life in unpredictable ways. From a psychological perspective, one of the factors that makes small changes so powerful is their ability to be absorbed into our habits without generating significant resistance. Humans are creatures of habit, and small changes are much easier to incorporate into our daily routine than large or radical ones. This is because small adjustments don't challenge our comfort zone or trigger internal resistance, which can happen when we try to make drastic changes in our lives. Psychologist and author James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, describes how small changes, called atomic habits, can have a profound impact over the long term. For example, if a person decides to read just 10 pages of a book each day, it may initially seem like an insignificant change. However, over time, that daily action becomes a habit, and the accumulation of that small habit leads to big results. Within a year, that person will have read more than 3,600 pages, which is equivalent to several full books. The power of small changes lies in their ability to grow organically, without requiring a monumental effort. In the social and cultural sphere, it's also possible to see how small changes can have a massive impact. Great social revolutions don't always begin with mass movements or collective decisions, but with small acts of courage, disobedience, or social awareness. For example, the civil rights movement in the United States was catalyzed by a seemingly small act. Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus. That small act triggered a chain of events that ultimately changed the course of history. Similarly, Greta Thunberg, with her solo strike in front of the Swedish parliament, inspired millions of young people to join the fight against climate change, demonstrating that a single person, with a small action, can generate a global movement. These kinds of examples show us that small decisions and actions, even if they seem insignificant at the time, can have a multiplying effect when repeated and connected to the experiences of others, thus creating a collective change that can profoundly alter the social structure. From a philosophical and spiritual perspective, small changes are also seen as a means to achieving a state of wholeness or enlightenment. In Zen Buddhism, It is taught that transformation does not necessarily occur through grand revelations or dramatic changes, but rather through the consistent practice of small, everyday gestures such as meditation, mindfulness, or acts of kindness. Simply being mindful of each action can lead to a profound transformation in the way a person sees and interacts with the world. Similarly, Stoicism emphasizes that true change comes from self-discipline and continuous improvement in small, daily actions. The accumulation of virtuous acts, even modest ones, has the power to shape a life full of purpose and serenity. Small changes, even if they may seem insignificant at the time, have the power to profoundly transform our realities because they are sustainable, cumulative, and multifaceted. These changes allow us to start from where we are, without having to wait for a perfect moment or a unique opportunity. Furthermore, they have the ability to generate a ripple effect that spreads to all areas of our lives, from health and personal finances to our social relationships and impact on the world. Everything a person conceives or achieves is born first as a desire. This initial spark, intangible and ethereal, takes root in the workshop of the imagination, where dreams are shaped and plans are woven with threads of purpose. There, in that sanctuary of the possible, the abstract is transmuted into the concrete, guided by will and clarity. In the second chapter, the 6 fundamental steps for transforming the desire for wealth into its tangible manifestation were revealed. Among them, the creation of a defined and practical plan, a roadmap leading to the desired treasure, was highlighted. Now, we delve into the art of building such plans, the cornerstone of prosperity. Here are the essential principles. A. The symphony of masterminds. Gather a group of allies, as many as your vision requires, and apply the principle of the mastermind, a collective force that multiplies individual talent. This principle is sacred. To ignore it is to sabotage your own destiny. Work in harmony with those whose skills complement yours, forging an unbreakable chain of cooperation. B. The exchange of value. Before convening your circle, define what benefits you will offer each member in exchange for their collaboration. No wise man demands effort without reward, for universal law dictates that every energy deserves its counterpart. Compensation can take 1,000 forms: knowledge, opportunities, or even the promise of a shared future. Money is just one facet. C. The dance of constancy. Meet with your mastermind at least twice a week. The more, the better, until the plan crystallizes into a flawless strategy. Discipline is the chisel that sculpts the marble of ideas until the hidden masterpiece is revealed. D. The empire of harmony. Maintain unbreakable cohesion among group members. Without this unity, the edifice collapses. The mastermind only flourishes where respect and synchronicity reign. If discord looms, failure lurks. You are immersed in an undertaking of great importance to your life. If you wish to achieve success, it is essential that your plans are well-developed and error-free. You must take advantage of the experience, education, innate ability, and creativity of others. This approach is in line with the methods used by those who have managed to accumulate great fortunes. No one has enough experience, education, talent, or knowledge to guarantee the creation of a great fortune without the collaboration of others. Every plan you decide to follow on your path to wealth must be the result of a joint effort between you and the other members of your mastermind. You may devise your own plans, either in whole or in part, but it is crucial that these plans be reviewed and approved by your mastermind. If the first plan you adopt doesn't work, change it to a new one. If that new plan doesn't work either, try another, and so on until you find one that works. Herein lies the main reason why many men face failure: their lack of perseverance in creating new plans to replace those that don't work. The most intelligent person cannot succeed in accumulating wealth or in any other endeavor without practical and viable plans. Always remember this, and when your plans fail, understand that temporary failure is not the same as permanent failure. Failure only indicates that the plans weren't adequate. Make others. Start over from scratch. Temporary failure should be interpreted in only one way: the certainty that something isn't working out as planned. Millions of men spend their lives in misery and poverty because they lack a good plan for accumulating wealth. Their achievements cannot be greater than the effectiveness of their plans. No man is defeated until he gives up in his own mind. James J. Hill faced temporary failures when he tried to raise the capital needed to build an east-west railroad across the United States. But he also turned those failures into victories by creating new plans. Henry Ford experienced temporary setbacks not only early in his automotive career, but even after achieving great things. New ideas were his answer, and he continued to move toward economic success. We look at men who have accumulated great fortunes. However, we often only recognize their triumphs, overlooking the temporary failures they had to overcome before reaching the top. We often underestimate the power of small gestures, of those subtle adjustments that, like seeds, silently germinate into leafy trees of change. What begins as a seemingly insignificant act can, over time, completely alter the landscape of our reality. This happens because small changes possess a unique magic. They accumulate, multiply, and slowly but surely, weave new possibilities. A slight shift in routine is enough for everything to begin to flow differently. Imagine removing the television during family dinner. A small gesture, yes, but one capable of transforming silence into conversation, distance into complicity. This is how small changes work. They break inertia, open windows where there were once walls, and turn the everyday into a fertile space for growth. Big resolutions often begin with enthusiasm and die of exhaustion. In contrast, modest adjustments, such as waking up 15 minutes earlier or taking a moment to reflect on gratitude, integrate effortlessly into our daily rhythms. Their true power lies not in intensity, but in consistency. Drop by drop, water pierces rock. Every step, no matter how small, is a triumph. By accomplishing a simple goal, organizing a corner of the house, writing a line in a journal, the soul is fueled by confidence. These quiet achievements are the antidote to frustration, for they remind us that growth is not a leap, but a journey. The brain is a garden where habits are like paths. The more you walk them, the deeper they become. Repeating small actions, like taking a deep breath when faced with stress or choosing a kind word, carves new grooves in the mind. Over time, what initially required willpower becomes natural, like the beating of a heart. Life isn't transformed in a day, but in the aggregate of all days. A 1% improvement every day seems small, but after a year it's not 365%, but 3,700% higher, according to the formula of compound interest. This is how patience works. Invisible in the moment, unstoppable in eternity. Don't despise the small, because in the humble lies the germ of the extraordinary. A seed doesn't debate whether it will become a tree, it simply grows. And perhaps, without intending to, one day you'll look up and discover that that first gesture, so fragile, so brave, has changed the world. Chapter 3. Decisions. A thorough study of more than 25,000 men and women who had faced failure revealed a common denominator. Indecisiveness ranked first among the 31 leading causes of their downfalls. Procrastination, the antithesis of determination, is an adversary we all must overcome at some point in our lives. Another analysis, focusing on hundreds of people who had amassed fortunes exceeding $1 million, revealed a clear pattern. They all shared the habit of making decisions quickly and changing those decisions only when strictly necessary, and always with caution. In contrast, those who failed to accumulate wealth tended to act in the opposite way. They hesitated when making decisions, and when they finally did, they changed them frequently and impulsively. An emblematic example of this virtue was Henry Ford, whose ability to make quick decisions and stick to them became one of his hallmarks. This quality, often interpreted as stubbornness, was precisely what led him to persist in producing his famous Model T, dubbed by some as the world's most peculiar automobile, even when his advisors and much of his clientele demanded a change. While it's true that Ford may have delayed revamping his design too long, that same steadfastness allowed him to consolidate a colossal fortune before change became inevitable. Ford's determination undoubtedly bordered on stubbornness, but this characteristic, in its proper measure, is preferable to chronic indecision. It's better to decide with conviction and revise with prudence than to live trapped in doubt and change course at the first obstacle. The key lies in finding balance, acting boldly when appropriate, and adapting wisely when the situation demands it. We all have habits we want to change, but why is it so difficult? On the one hand, the brain resists change. On the other, there are effective strategies for transforming these unwanted behaviors. Bad habits, in particular, are easy to acquire but difficult to completely eradicate. Therefore, rather than trying to eliminate them abruptly, a smarter strategy is to replace them, replacing a negative habit with a positive one that takes advantage of the same triggers and offers a similar reward. How habits shape your behavior. Imagine someone who, after dinner, feels a craving for something sweet. Over time, this desire becomes a need. If it's not satisfied, they have trouble falling asleep. This example, common to many people, illustrates how habits, both good and bad, modify our behavior and go beyond the action itself. It's not just about eating dessert at night, but how that small act alters our emotional regulation, our mood, and even our ability to relax. The anticipated reward, the hidden gear of habits. The brain works through a reward system. A bad habit, although harmful in the long term, usually offers immediate gratification. In the case of the nighttime sweet, sugar intake activates brain circuits associated with pleasure, releasing neurotransmitters like dopamine. Over time, the brain anticipates that reward. It becomes accustomed to receiving it and expects it. If one day you decide to break that habit, for example, to improve your diet, a neurochemical imbalance occurs. Your brain, primed for its sugar fix, experiences a discrepancy between what it expected and reality. This lack of reward generates a negative response. It decreases dopamine, which causes dissatisfaction, restlessness, and even difficulty relaxing. The prediction error, why some suffer more than others. Suppose two people, Peter and Charles, decide to stop eating sweets at night. If Peter has been doing this for years and Charles hasn't, Peter will experience a prediction error. His brain, accustomed to rewards, will react with frustration to their absence. Charles, on the other hand, won't notice any difference. This phenomenon explains why abandoning a deep-rooted habit can affect mood and tranquility. It's not just that you're missing the pleasure of sweets. It's that your brain associates that act with relaxation. By eliminating it, it interprets it as something missing, keeping you in a state of alertness that makes it difficult to sleep. The solution: replace, not delete. Trying to stop a habit cold turkey rarely works. Instead, the key is to replace it with a less harmful alternative that satisfies the same need. For example, swap a late-night ice cream for raspberries with dark chocolate. Later, replace it with melatonin gummies, which provide a sweet touch while promoting rest. This approach is less demanding on the brain, as it maintains the structure of the habit, trigger, action, reward, but modifies its impact. Identify the trigger: boredom, stress, loneliness. Recognizing what triggers the habit allows you to intervene. Find an alternative reward. If you eat out of anxiety, try breathing techniques, meditation, or interacting with a pet. Reduce friction. Choose easy and enjoyable alternatives. If you're looking at your phone out of boredom, call a friend instead of losing yourself on social media. Habits, good or bad, are automated behaviors that save mental energy. They act like a behavioral wardrobe we wear every day. The problem is that while positive habits operate silently, negative ones require great effort to control. A classic example of how habits work is seeing an airline advertisement and feeling the desire to travel. This desire leads you to take action to fulfill it and, ultimately, obtain the reward. Thus, the first element of a habit, whether positive or negative, is the trigger, that stimulus that awakens the desire to obtain something. The key here is to foster the triggers for positive behaviors and eliminate those for negative behaviors. The second element is the behavior or routine, which takes us from that trigger to the reward. It's what enables us to satisfy the desire. For example, when we see an ice cream shop, the desire to eat one is activated, and the behavior would be to go buy it. That's the action that leads us to the reward, which is enjoying the ice cream. Reward is the third element and consists of the satisfaction of having achieved our goal, which can be positive or negative for our health. Although we often associate reward with something negative, such as eating unhealthy foods, it can also be something positive, such as feeling good after exercising and enjoying the endorphin rush. Thus, rewards don't always have to be harmful. You can even experience emotional satisfaction from eating healthy, even if it isn't always as pleasurable as eating less healthy foods. However, the feeling of doing yourself a favor and taking care of your health can also generate satisfaction. It's important to remember these three elements: the trigger, the behavior, and the reward, as they are essential to modifying any habit you want to change. Now, if you want to change a negative habit, it's much easier to do so if you understand how habits are formed. A simple way to understand this is with a neuroscience phrase: neurons that fire together, wire together. This idea, summarized by neuroscientist Donald Hebb, explains how behaviors and habits are organized. A famous example is Pavlov's experiment, in which dogs salivated upon hearing a bell because they associated the sound with food. At first, the bell had no connection to food, but when paired repeatedly, the dogs began to salivate just upon hearing the sound. This same process occurs in us. For example, if you have fond childhood memories of a place like McDonald's, your brain will associate that place with happiness, and therefore, you will go there when you seek to relive that feeling. This happens because the reward-related areas of your brain activate simultaneously, creating a connection between the place, the object, and the emotion. Bright colors, toys, and surprise are all elements that reinforce dopamine, the chemical associated with pleasure, and this creates an association between the place and a positive memory, thus affecting our decisions. Now, not all habits are formed with the same ease or strength. There are three key factors that determine the strength of a habit, whether good or bad. Time. The more time you spend performing a behavior, the stronger the connection in your brain will become. If you've been associating McDonald's with happiness for years, that connection will be harder to break. Emotional intensity. If a situation provokes a strong emotional response, whether positive or negative, that connection will be stronger. For example, if a bad experience causes you great suffering, your brain will learn to avoid that situation. Friction. This factor relates to how easy or difficult a habit is to form. If a habit requires a lot of effort or discomfort, it will be harder to maintain. For example, it's easier to relax after a tiring day and eat fast food than to exercise. To create a habit, the key isn't to make more effort, but to choose habits with low friction, meaning they're not as difficult to perform. The easier and more pleasurable a habit is, the easier it will be to maintain and, in the long run, form a stronger connection in your brain. This is achieved, in part, by making the habit as enjoyable as possible. For example, if you want to exercise, try to find an activity you enjoy so that it becomes a pleasure. Furthermore, it's important to know that neurons that don't fire together disconnect. So, every time you decide not to give in to a temptation, like going to that fast food restaurant, you're weakening the connection between the trigger and the response. This is the same thing that happens when you avoid an exaggerated emotional response to an offense, and little by little you control that reaction. To change a habit, you need to follow 4 fundamental rules. Make it visible. Identify the triggers for the behaviors you want to encourage and make them visible. For example, if you want to eat more fruit, have it readily available and visible. If you want to avoid eating something unhealthy, hide it or get rid of it so it's not a constant temptation. Make it attractive. The key to sustaining a habit is to make it as pleasurable as possible. For example, if you want to eat healthier, try doing it with others or find recipes you enjoy. The more pleasure the habit brings you, the easier it will be to maintain. Make it easy. Eliminate as much friction as possible and reduce complexity. If you want to exercise, start with small goals, like walking 3,000 steps a day, and then gradually increase them. Most people who fail to accumulate the resources necessary to meet their needs are often vulnerable to the opinions of others. They allow newspaper headlines or casual comments from those around them to shape their thoughts. However, opinions are perhaps the most abundant and ephemeral thing in the world. Everyone has a stockpile of them ready to share with anyone willing to listen. If you allow yourself to be influenced by external voices when making decisions, you will never achieve success in any endeavor, much less in the noble task of turning your aspirations into tangible wealth. Those who submit to the influence of others end up losing sight of their own desires. In applying the principles outlined here, you must follow your own judgment, make your decisions firmly, and stand by them with conviction. Don't place your trust in just anyone. Reserve it only for those members of your mastery circle, carefully selected for their sincere affinity with your goals and their genuine support. Often, even those closest to us, well-intentioned, but not always wise, can become obstacles through their advice, or, occasionally, through jokes that undermine trust. How many people carry insecurities for years, wounded by words thrown around without malice, but with profound consequences? You have a mind of your own. Use it. Decide. If you need information or data to support your choices, as you often will, seek it out discreetly, without prematurely revealing your intentions. There are those who, lacking true knowledge, try to appear wise by talking excessively and listening insufficiently. If you want to cultivate the ability to make decisions quickly, observe carefully, listen patiently, and speak with restraint. Verbosity rarely goes hand in hand with action. Those who talk too much not only miss valuable opportunities to learn, but also expose their plans to those, driven by envy, who might undermine them. Remember, every word spoken in front of someone of genuine knowledge reveals, unfiltered, the depth, or lack thereof, of their own understanding. True wisdom is recognized in humility and stillness. Also, don't forget that everyone you meet is, just like you, looking for opportunities to prosper. If you share your plans without caution, you may find that someone, more reserved, has already achieved the goal you were pursuing, using precisely the ideas you lightly shared. Great projects are forged in silence. Dreams are protected in discretion. Wealth is not measured solely in coins, but in clarity of purpose and strength of character. One of the first decisions you should make is to keep your mouth shut and your eyes and ears wide open. To remind yourself of this advice, it might be helpful to write the following epigram in capital letters and post it in a prominent place where you will see it every day. Tell the world what you intend to do, but do your actions before you speak about them. This could be interpreted as a way of saying, what really matters are the actions, not the words. Decision-making is a crucial process by which an individual or group selects one alternative from among several available options to solve a problem or address a particular situation. This process, which occurs frequently and daily, becomes especially relevant when conflicts arise that demand an appropriate solution. It involves a conscious and directed process in which various options are identified, their implications are evaluated, and the alternative that best fits the desired objectives is selected. This approach allows efforts to be directed toward clear and defined goals. Process steps. Problem definition. The first step is to clearly understand and define the problem to be solved. Gathering relevant information. Obtaining relevant data to help evaluate the different options available. Exploring alternatives. Consider various possible solutions, assessing their advantages and disadvantages. Selecting the most appropriate option. After evaluating the alternatives, the option that best aligns with the stated objectives is chosen. Decision implementation. Execute the selected alternative effectively. Evaluation of results. Finally, the effects and results obtained are reviewed to learn and adjust future decisions. Adaptability. Decision-making requires flexibility, as circumstances may change and new information may become available. It's essential to be able to adjust decisions based on new data or situations that arise. Application contexts. This process is applicable in a variety of contexts, including personal, professional, and organizational settings. It is particularly relevant in strategic planning and the pursuit of success, as it allows individuals and groups to orient themselves toward effective and efficient solutions. Types of decisions. Decisions can be classified according to different criteria, such as rationality, foresight, and urgency. According to rationality. Rational decisions. These are based on a thorough analysis of the available options, their consequences, and the objectives to be achieved. They are characterized by a logical and systematic approach. Intuitive decisions. These are made based on previous experience, emotions, and personal judgment, without the need for detailed analysis. According to forecast. Scheduled decisions. These are routine decisions that follow pre-established patterns, rules, or schedules. They are predictable and are made consistently. Unscheduled decisions. These are made spontaneously, without precedents or clear rules. They have a significant long-term impact and require greater creativity and adaptability. According to urgency. Routine decisions. These are made in similar and repetitive contexts, where an urgent response is not required. Emergency decisions. These are decisions that must be made quickly and immediately in the face of unexpected or unforeseen situations that require an urgent solution. Management models. In the organizational sphere, different models are used to address decision-making, such as the rational model, the bounded rationality model, the political model, the intuitive model, and the creative model. Each of these models is applied depending on the nature of the problem and the context in which it arises. Factors influencing decision-making. Several factors can influence the decision-making process, including available information. The quality and quantity of relevant information is essential to properly evaluate the different alternatives. Time and pressure. Time constraints and the pressure experienced in certain contexts can affect the quality of the decision. Personality and cognition. Personal characteristics such as caution, perfectionism, intelligence, and mental flexibility play an important role in how decisions are made. Emotions. The emotional system, known as System 1, can lead to quick but less rational decisions. On the other hand, the logical system involves more conscious and detailed analysis. Social environment. Internal and external influences, such as group membership or social norms, also affect the decision-making process. Importance of knowing how to make decisions. The ability to make decisions thoughtfully and consciously has multiple benefits. Responsibility. Making well-founded decisions allows you to take responsibility for the results, building a more secure and predictable future. Self-esteem. Independent decision-making strengthens self-confidence, reducing anxiety and improving the sense of control over life. Impact on others. Considering how our decisions affect others is essential to maintaining healthy and ethical relationships based on respect and empathy. Continuous improvement. Reflecting on past experiences and learning from the results achieved improves our ability to make better decisions in the future. Decision-making is one of the most complex cognitive processes, as it involves managing uncertainty and evaluating potential benefits and losses. In this context, it is important to consider several psychological factors. Affect heuristic. This unconscious mental mechanism allows us to make quick decisions based on emotions and previous experiences. Although these decisions can be efficient in some cases, they are not always the most optimal. Analytical and reasoning skills. Deep analysis and the ability to reason logically are essential when faced with complex decisions, as they allow you to choose the best option among the available alternatives. The value of every decision is measured by the courage required to carry it out. The great choices, those that have laid the foundations of civilization, were made by assuming immense risks, even under the shadow of death. Abraham Lincoln, when he promulgated the Emancipation Declaration, knew that his act, liberating people of color in the United States, would earn him the enmity of thousands, including allies and supporters. However, his conviction was stronger than his fear of rejection. Socrates, faced with the hemlock, chose poison rather than betray his principles. With his sacrifice, he not only defended his integrity, but also bequeathed humanity a beacon of freedom, the right to think and express oneself without chains. His courage transcended his time, illuminating future generations. Even in the midst of controversy, figures like General Robert E. Lee demonstrated that courage does not always align with victory. His decision to join the Southern cause, aware of the cost in lives and his own destiny, was an act of extreme conviction, although his legacy remains a subject of debate. Every important choice comes with a price, and it's in that moment, when fear and duty collide, that the character of a person or a nation is most clearly revealed. In the late 1990s, a public servant in the health sector named Stephen Luby left his hometown of Omaha, Nebraska, and embarked on a journey of no return to Karachi, Pakistan. Karachi, one of the most populous cities in the world, was home to more than 9 million inhabitants in 1998. It was Pakistan's economic heart and a vital transportation hub, with some of the busiest airports and ports in the region. Its commercial districts glittered with the conveniences of modern life, its streets bustled with activity, and yet, paradoxically, Karachi was also among the least livable cities on the planet. More than 60% of its residents lived in overcrowded informal settlements and shantytowns. These densely populated neighborhoods were made up of precarious housing built from old cardboard, concrete blocks, and other discarded materials. There was no garbage collection, no reliable electrical wiring, and no constant access to drinking water. During the dry season, the streets were covered in dust and debris. When the rains came, they transformed into putrid mudholes, where the stagnant water became a breeding ground for mosquitoes and children played among mountains of waste. These unsanitary conditions were the perfect breeding ground for disease. The contaminated water triggered outbreaks of diarrhea, vomiting, and abdominal pain. Nearly a third of the children suffered from malnutrition, and overcrowding accelerated the spread of viral and bacterial infections. It was precisely this public health crisis that had brought Stephen Luby to Pakistan. The power of a simple habit. Luby and his team soon realized that, in such an unsanitary environment, something as simple as hand washing could make a world of difference. However, they discovered something intriguing. Most residents already knew that hand washing was important. Yet, very few did it correctly. Some simply ran their hands under running water briefly, others only washed one hand, and many forgot to do it before preparing food. The knowledge was there, but consistency was conspicuously absent. That's when Luby and his team partnered with Procter & Gamble to distribute Safeguard soap to the public. Unlike regular soap, Safeguard offered a more pleasurable experience, turning an everyday act into a small ritual of self-care. The question was, could this transform a passive knowledge into an ingrained habit? The soap produced a generous lather upon contact with water, enveloping hands in a soft cloud that made washing an almost pleasurable moment. Its fresh and comforting fragrance added a touch of well-being to the daily routine. Suddenly, something as simple as hand hygiene became a pleasant experience. I think the real goal of promoting hand washing isn't just to change behaviors, but to create a habit, Luby reflected. It's much easier for people to adopt a product that offers a gratifying sensory cue, like the minty freshness of toothpaste, than to incorporate a practice without pleasurable stimuli, like flossing. Procter & Gamble's marketing team understood this and focused on transforming hand washing into a positive experience. The results were immediate. Within months, researchers observed a marked improvement in the health of neighborhood children. Cases of diarrhea decreased by 52%, pneumonia by 48%, and skin infections like impetigo decreased by 35%. But what was most surprising were the long-term effects. We returned to some homes in Karachi 6 years later, Luby recounted. More than 95% of the families who received soap and were encouraged to wash their hands had designated a space for it, with soap and water always available. What was most revealing was that, even though we stopped providing them with soap 5 years earlier, they had internalized the habit and maintained it over time. The lesson was clear. When an everyday act becomes pleasurable, it ceases to be an obligation and becomes a part of life. The simple scent of soap had been the bridge to a custom that safeguarded the health of an entire community. Chapter 4. Motivation. If you want to transcend in life, stop asking yourself what the minimum effort required is and start asking yourself, what is the maximum I can endure? Human beings are capable of amazing feats, but our evolution only comes through one fundamental process: adaptation. And to activate it, we need challenges that push us to the limits of our capabilities, where there are only two options: transform or be left behind. The body, in its ancient wisdom, seeks to conserve energy. Therefore, it settles for just enough to survive. But greatness isn't born of comfort, but of the willingness to cross the threshold where effort becomes sacrifice. People who achieve excellence aren't inherently different. They simply choose to educate themselves, invest in their growth, and persevere even when the path is painful. The key isn't to look for shortcuts, but to ask yourself, how far can I go? How much more am I capable of giving? When your mind becomes obsessed with that question, every achievement becomes a stepping stone to going further, to carrying greater weights, to surpassing not only others, but also yesterday's version of yourself. This requires a radical shift in mindset, a healthy obsession with discovering your breaking point and then moving beyond it. This is how you master the art of adaptation. This is how you build character. The comfort zone is the enemy of greatness. No one reached the top by sitting back. No one became extraordinary by relaxing. Those who succeed understand that the only thing that separates the ordinary from the outstanding is the ability to withstand pressure. Diamonds wouldn't exist without it, neither would champions. Most people shrink from challenges, but winners flourish in them. Obstacles strengthen you. Competition sharpens you. Failures teach you. And when you feel the weight is unbearable, remember, the person who has the power to change everything is standing in the mirror. It's you. You are the only one who decides whether you will push your limits or settle for less. When life knocks you down, repeat, I can handle one more hit. Because greatness isn't a matter of brute strength, but of mental resilience. Smart striving, your compass to exceptionalism. Hard work isn't enough. True effort begins when you think you can't go on. It's not just about sweating. It's about learning, growing, and finding solutions where others see dead ends. It's the commitment to get back up again after falling, to keep going when your mind screams, enough. If you want extraordinary results, your dedication must be extraordinary too. Success, in any field, demands dedication. Being a good parent, a leader, an athlete, or a visionary requires one thing in common: deliberate action. There are no shortcuts. Every minute invested in improving, every choice that prioritizes growth, brings you closer to the life you desire. Even when the mountain seems insurmountable, the secret is to take another step. Don't look at the summit. Focus on the next move. The accumulation of steady steps will take you further than you can imagine. Persistence, the language of those who refuse to give up. Pressure separates the mediocre from the legendary. If you give up at the first obstacle, you'll never know what you're made of. But if you persevere, if you refuse to give in, you'll become that rarity everyone admires. Someone who chooses to be a diamond in a world of coal. So, when the road gets dark, repeat, not today, not this time. Because you are stronger than you think. Because every fall is a lesson, and every step, a victory. Life doesn't defeat you, it prepares you. And in the end, those who persevere discover that the limit was never in the body, but in the mind. Choose to be extraordinary. Pressure is your ally. Effort is your ritual. And persistence is your legacy. If I face my challenges day by day and focus on improving a little each day, it's not about conquering everything immediately. My goal is to improve constantly, day after day. As I progress, momentum comes naturally, and along with consistency, these two factors bring about significant changes. If my goal is to get closer to my destination, I will grow stronger every day. It won't be long before I see progress, and that progress will give me the confidence and strength to keep going. Every day, I will be stronger, closer to what I want to achieve. Don't give up. Give yourself a day of commitment, a day of intention, a day of focus, A day where you love yourself enough to make powerful decisions that will benefit your life. A day where you care enough about your life to stand up for what truly matters to you. A day where you are strong enough to say no to everything that makes you feel less than the powerful person you are. Just one day. Just one day to conquer and move forward. Give yourself that day. Step by step, one day at a time, I will get closer to my goal. Each choice brings me a little closer, choice by choice. I won't give up, even though I know it will be difficult. And I also know it will be worth it. I know I deserve it and that I am strong enough to achieve it. No matter how difficult it gets, I can overcome this. Take it one step at a time, one day at a time. Weakness. We all have moments of weakness. I'm not naturally strong, fast, or flexible. I'm not the smartest person either. Sometimes, I get carried away by trivial things. There are days when I waste time and worry too much about unimportant things. My mind sometimes feels small and trapped in its own thoughts. However, I want to tell you that a person's true strength can lie in their weaknesses, because weaknesses have the power to transform into strengths. I will not accept that my weakness defines me, or that this is the only thing I'm destined to do. I am always fighting, always battling, struggling, and fighting my weaknesses to change them, to overcome them. Sometimes I fail, but I always get back up. Every day, I move forward with the determination not to give up. I can tell you everything I've done, but the one thing I can't do is fight for you. That part belongs to you. What's the difference between a gazelle and a lion? A gazelle flees in the face of danger, but a lion fights. This is what happens to many of us. We keep going only when pushed, but as soon as the pressure is off, we stop. You must decide what your why is. You must ask yourself what motivates you, what drives you, what keeps you going. Every opportunity is a last chance, a chance to prove to yourself again what you are capable of achieving. Pain is part of the process. If you're going to cry, don't let it be to give up, but to keep going. The pain you feel now is just the beginning of a future reward. Fight with everything you've got. I know things won't always be easy, but if you keep going with all your effort, you'll make it. This attitude should be part of your daily life. Every extra step, every extra round, every right decision will strengthen you both mentally and physically. Stay in the game and fight your weaknesses, fear, time, and everything that slows you down. When you face a challenge, even if it seems like you have no chance of winning, remember that you have nothing to lose. Get up, keep going with everything you've got. Give it your all, every ounce of energy, every drop of sweat, every drop of blood. Only then, when you've given your all, can you think of giving up. But remember, if you want to succeed in this game, you must have a warrior within you. Life isn't easy, and nothing should be handed to you just because you've achieved it in the past. The real work begins after the initial achievements. Greatness doesn't come without sacrifice and without facing problems. Every time you solve a problem, you'll be one step closer to your goal. Don't let fear stop you, and never stop trying. You have to give more than you think you're capable of, and only then will you see results. Don't expect things to come easily, because success is built on hard work and determination. The key is discipline, not giving up, and perseverance. Life is like an arena where you must fight for what you want, not hide. The real battle isn't against others, it's against yourself and your own limits. Fight for your dreams, demonstrate your character, overcome obstacles, and confront negativity, both external and internal. Only then will you achieve the life you truly deserve. Don't let life defeat you. Those who truly want something are willing to give it their all, to put every ounce of their being into it. What you want in life is there for you, but only those who are hungry for success are the ones who achieve it. The world is full of opportunities, but most fall by the wayside because they don't dare to take the necessary step. Please don't let yourself be one of those people who hide. The world is a battlefield where the difference between winning and losing is fighting with everything you've got, without fear of failure. If you're not willing to fight for what you want, your dreams won't come true. Life will challenge you. But if you face those challenges with courage, you will find greatness. When life challenges you, if you're not willing to fight for your dreams, they'll never come true. Don't allow regret and disappointment to take root in your heart. When the world tests you, prove who you truly are. Because in the end, success or failure doesn't define your worth. What matters is living with pride, knowing that you gave your all, that you poured every ounce of your soul into the pursuit of what you yearned for. I didn't come this far to settle. I hear some say, when I achieve this, when I reach the top, I'll rest. But let me tell you something. There is no end. True winners never stop. If you conquer a goal, reach for a bigger one. If you climb a mountain, find another even higher. Greatness lies not in the summit, but in the journey, in the constant pursuit of improvement, in the challenges that shape your character and make existence extraordinary. I haven't come this far to settle for this. Every achievement is a stepping stone, not a destination. I'm proud of my victories, but that doesn't mean I'll stop. Proud, but never satisfied. Proud, but always hungry. Proud, and always ready for more. Because a true champion doesn't chase empty titles. They seek growth, excellence, transcendence. The challenge is what forges greatness. If the path were easy, the destination would be worthless. An athlete doesn't become a champion without worthy rivals. There is no greatest of all time without competitors who push them to excel. Greatness is born from the process, from effort, from discipline. If you reach your goal, set a higher one. If you reach the top, aim higher. Anyone who aspires to be the best must work harder than the rest. It's no secret. The greatest train harder, learn more, endure more failure, more rejection, more pain. If your rival does 10 reps, you do 11. If they do 11, you do 12. And if they do 12, then 13, 14, 15. Whatever you do, always take that extra step. Some are born with talent, but without effort, that gift is wasted. And there are those who, without a shred of natural talent, have created magic with sheer determination. That's what it's all about. That inner fire, that heart that beats strong inside you, just waiting to be unleashed. Get up, always. There will be days when life knocks you down, when everything seems to conspire against you. But when the world has you on the ropes, say, not today. Today I have the strength to get back up, the courage to face challenges, and the determination to overcome the impossible. If you want more than most, you must work harder than everyone else. Longer hours, smarter, more resilient. Success has no shortcuts. It's built on ethics, sacrifice, and consistency. It's not about one thing, but about everything. Persevering despite obstacles, keeping faith when all seems lost. The power of your words. One of the most transformative decisions you can make is to change your language. As Proverbs says, life and death lie in the power of the tongue. Your words shape your reality. You can speak defeat about your future, or you can declare victory. Stop repeating what you don't have. Stop listening to the voices that tell you can't. Speak life, not death. Declare, I am blessed. I am capable. I am healthy. I am free. I am a winner. In the Old Testament, when God wanted to transform someone's destiny, he first changed their name. Because your identity defines your purpose. Stop calling yourself by who you were and start declaring who you will be. You are not your past. You are what you decide to be today. Speak to your storms. Jesus didn't complain about the storm. He spoke to the storm, and the storm obeyed. If you're in the midst of chaos today, financial, emotional, physical, stop complaining and tell the storm to be quiet. Disease, get out of my body. Debts will be canceled. Failure, you have no place here. You are the master of your life. Get rid of what shouldn't be there. Because words create realities. Faith is the primordial element of the mind, the catalyst that transforms the intangible into reality. When thought is imbued with faith, the subconscious captures its vibration, transfigures it into its spiritual essence, and elevates it toward universal intelligence, just as occurs in prayer. Among positive emotions, faith, love, and the sacred desire of the heart, not mere carnal impulse, stand out as the most powerful forces. When these three converge, they imbue thought with such intensity that it penetrates without resistance into the subconscious, where it is transmuted into its spiritual equivalent, the only language that infinite intelligence recognizes and responds to. To understand the crucial role of autosuggestion in the materialization of desire, whether in the form of wealth, fulfillment, or achievement, we must recognize that faith is a cultivable state of mind. Through conscious affirmations and repeated commands to the subconscious, the principle of autosuggestion acts as a bridge between aspiration and its manifestation. Imagine, for example, the purpose that guides you as you read these words. You long to master the art of converting desire, that ephemeral spark, into its tangible counterpart. By following the teachings on autosuggestion and the power of the subconscious, precisely summarized in the dedicated chapters, you can program your mind to believe, with unwavering firmness, in the attainment of your goals. The subconscious, once convinced, will act on that certainty and return to you not only reinforced faith, but also clear strategies to achieve what you desire. Faith is not a gift reserved for a select few. It's a muscle that grows with practice. By mastering the 13 fundamental principles, each a step toward inner mastery, you will discover that faith grows deliberately, fueled by the disciplined repetition of affirmations. This method, the only proven way to develop the emotion of faith, operates under an immutable law. Every thought repeated with sufficient intensity and conviction eventually takes root in the subconscious and becomes reality. To illustrate this principle, let's consider a sobering phenomenon: the formation of a criminal. As one eminent criminologist observed, the person who first brushes against crime repels it with horror. If he persists in its contact, the repulsion is dulled, he tolerates it. And if he immerses himself in it long enough, he eventually embraces it and allows himself to be molded by its influence. This process is no different from the mechanism by which any thought, repeated insistently, takes root in the subconscious and eventually materializes, whether in noble or destructive acts. Here's the key: emotionally charged thoughts, especially those tinged with faith, love, or higher purpose, acquire an incomparable life force. Emotions are the fuel that propels ideas toward fulfillment. When thought merges with faith, love, or transcendent passion, far from mere physical compulsion, its power is multiplied, accelerating its conversion into concrete results. In short, the mind is an alchemical workshop where the raw metals of desire are refined into pure gold by the fire of faith. Cultivate it, repeat it, live with the certainty that the invisible is already on its way to taking shape. Because, as the mystic poet wrote, doubt is a dead weight. Faith is wings for the soul. It is not only the impulses of thought intertwined with faith, but also those tinged with any emotion, be it light or dark, that can penetrate the depths of the subconscious and shape it. From this truth, a crucial revelation emerges. The subconscious does not discriminate between what it nourishes and what it destroys. Just as easily as it gives life to a hopeful vision, it can materialize a fear or a doubt. This explains the enigma many refer to as bad luck or adverse destiny, a mirage under which millions perceive themselves trapped in poverty or failure, convinced that a force beyond their control condemns them. However, the root of their misfortune lies not in external forces, but in the constant sowing of negative beliefs that the subconscious obediently transforms into reality. This is the precise moment to remind you that you possess the power to transform your own destiny. If you long for a desire to manifest in tangible form, whether in wealth, health, or fulfillment, you must offer it to your subconscious mind, wrapped in the unshakable certainty that it will be fulfilled. Faith is not a mere companion. It is the spark that activates the internal mechanism. And although it may seem paradoxical, it is possible, even necessary, to guide the subconscious mind through autosuggestion, just as a gardener cultivates the soil with patience and strategy. To achieve this most effectively, adopt the attitude of someone who has already received what they ask for. Act, feel, and vibrate in harmony with that still invisible reality. The subconscious mind, then, will seek the most direct and practical ways to convert that command imbued with conviction into concrete actions. What has been presented so far is merely the threshold of a journey of discovery. True mastery is not achieved through mere reading, but through constant and conscious practice. It is an art that requires training the mind so that elevated emotions, hope, courage, gratitude, reign over the shadows of doubt and fear. Only when the inner territory is purified of negativity does it become fertile soil where faith takes unshakable root. A mind thus enlightened not only harbors the power to send clear commands to the subconscious, but to see them carried out with the precision of a natural law. Perfection, like all things worth achieving, requires dedication. But you've already taken the first step, the most crucial one, to understand that the subconscious is the workshop where thoughts are forged into destiny. Now, it's up to you to choose wisely which seeds to plant there. Motivation is the invisible soul that animates our steps, the psychological drive that guides us toward goals, dreams, and the satisfaction of our deepest needs. It could be defined as that inner spark, that psychic energy that drives us to initiate actions, sustain them over time, and, sometimes, to tenaciously overcome obstacles. Without it, even the noblest goals can be forgotten, abandoned along the way. It's a dynamic process, an internal river that flows between desire and action. It not only activates our behavior, but also directs it purposefully, maintaining its intensity until the desired goal is reached. This psychological phenomenon unfolds in several stages. Activation, the moment we decide to start, when the idea becomes movement. Persistence, the strength that keeps us going, even when the road gets tough. Directionality, the compass that guides our efforts toward a specific goal. Vigor, the passion and energy with which we face every challenge. Completion, the satisfaction of crossing the finish line, of seeing the effort culminated. It's an internal state that fluctuates in intensity, shaping the likelihood of an action being carried out. It's intimately linked to our desires, beliefs, and intentions, weaving an invisible web between the heart and the mind. Intrinsic motivation, the pleasure of doing for doing's sake. It stems from the enjoyment of the activity itself, from pure personal interest. It's the curiosity that drives us to explore, the love of learning something new, or the simple satisfaction of creating. This motivation, rooted in the most authentic part of our being, tends to be more lasting and is linked to profound emotional well-being. Extrinsic motivation, the power of external stimuli. It comes from rewards, recognition, or even the avoidance of negative consequences. Although it's effective in situations where natural interest is limited, such as studying for a qualification or working for a salary, it often loses strength over time if it's not complemented by an internal purpose. Positive and negative motivation, between attracting and avoiding. Positive motivation drives us toward rewards, achievements, and gratifying experiences. Negative motivation, it keeps us away from punishment, failure, or unwanted situations. Both can coexist, especially in areas such as education or work, where the balance between incentives and consequences shapes our behavior. Theories that try to explain it. Maslow's pyramid, an upward journey from basic needs, food, safety, to self-actualization, suggesting that only when the fundamentals are met do we aspire to something higher. Yargi theory, Clayton Alderfer simplifies Maslow's hierarchy into 3 groups: existence, relationship, and growth. Herzberg's two-factor theory distinguishes between motivating factors, achievement, recognition, and hygienic factors, working conditions, salary, which prevent dissatisfaction but do not necessarily motivate. McClellan's theory identifies 3 key drives: achievement, self-improvement, power, influence, and affiliation, social belonging. Why is it so important? Motivation is the invisible driving force behind all human action. Without it, even the most brilliant talents can fall asleep. Its influence extends into multiple dimensions: psychological, affects stress, self-esteem, and the ability to concentrate; health and well-being. A motivated person faces life with greater energy and resilience. Therapeutics. In psychology, patient motivation is a key predictor of success in recovery. The biology and psychology behind impulse. Motivation is a dance between the internal and external, where our emotional states compete to dominate behavior. It is flexible, adapting to new experiences, and is deeply linked to our capacity to learn and evolve. Motivation is that inner whisper that tells us to keep going, whether it's driven by passion, reward, or even fear of failure. Studying it not only helps us understand why we act, but also helps us design strategies to cultivate a more fulfilling life, both personally and professionally. Understanding its nuances is mastering the art of inspiring ourselves and others toward higher and more meaningful goals. In the end, as Antoine de Saint-Exupéry wrote, if you want to build a ship, don't start by gathering wood, but by awakening in men the longing for the endless sea. True motivation isn't imposed, it's sown in the heart. Chapter 5. He who grasps too much achieves little. In most cases, this applies. It's an old popular saying that holds a profound practical lesson. Its power lies in the simplicity with which it summarizes a common reality. Trying to do too many things at once, or taking on more responsibilities than one can handle, ultimately undermines the quality, focus, and results of each task. Since ancient times, this saying has been used to warn about the dangers of excessive ambition or a lack of planning. In everyday life, it's common to see people who, driven by the desire to take advantage of every possible opportunity or by the inability to say no, end up collapsing under the weight of their own commitments. It's not uncommon to find examples of individuals who start multiple projects at once with great enthusiasm at first, but who soon find themselves overwhelmed, unable to devote enough time or attention to each one, and as a result, end up abandoning them or completing them with mediocrity. This saying also has an important application in the professional and business world. Many entrepreneurs, for example, rush to diversify their products or services without first establishing a solid foundation. They try to cover many markets, satisfy all audiences, or innovate on multiple fronts at the same time. However, lacking sufficient resources, whether time, personnel, knowledge, or money, they end up with scattered results, and their business loses focus and efficiency. Something similar also occurs in the workplace. Some employees take on additional tasks to stand out or please others, but without a clear strategy, they only manage to burn out and diminish their overall performance. On a personal level, learning is equally valuable. A person who wants to be an excellent student, an exemplary worker, a dedicated friend, a devoted partner, a high-performance athlete, and even start a side business will likely encounter emotional, physical, or mental burnout at some point. Too many activities can dilute passion and diminish the level of true commitment to each activity, generating frustration and even a sense of failure, not due to a lack of talent, but due to poor management of time and energy. This saying also holds a lesson about the importance of conscious choice and renunciation. In a world saturated with stimuli, options, and expectations, the wise man is not the one who does everything, but rather the one who knows how to select the essential and does so with excellence. Taking on less is not a sign of limitation, but rather of strategic focus. Pushing hard means focusing energy and resources on what truly matters. Therefore, this saying is an invitation to reflect on our priorities and true capabilities, and to act with humility and common sense. On a more philosophical level, this proverb can also relate to the concept of quality over quantity. It's not about how much we do, how many achievements we accumulate, or how many goals we set, but rather how we live what we do. Are we present in our actions, or do we simply check tasks off an endless list? Are we truly committed to our projects, or do we simply start them out of fear of falling behind? Even from a spiritual or emotional perspective, he who grasps too much, grasps little, speaks to us of fulfillment through limits. Human beings cannot be everywhere, cannot be everything at once. They need moments of pause, contemplation, and depth. In a world that rewards multitasking and relentless productivity, this saying is almost an act of rebellion. a reminder that less can be more, and that true mastery lies not in grasping everything, but in fully embracing what one chooses. The tendency to take on too much stems not only from external ambition, but also from an internal ego construct. Often, people don't realize that the desire to do many things at once stems from a need for validation, to feel useful, important, indispensable. They take on projects, take on responsibilities, and fill their schedules to the brim, not out of true passion, but out of fear of being seen as inadequate. The paradox is that the more you try to demonstrate your worth through the accumulation of tasks, the more you dilute the essence of what you can truly contribute. Performance declines, quality diminishes, and over time, physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion sets in. Anxiety, frustration, constant dissatisfaction, all a consequence of living in a race without a finish line, in a constant attempt to prove something to others, or to yourself. There are two fundamental types of knowledge: general knowledge and specialized knowledge. Although the former can be vast and encompass multiple disciplines, it alone is not sufficient to generate wealth. Great universities, for example, house in their faculties almost all forms of general knowledge accessible to civilization, yet many of their professors fail to accumulate fortunes. Why is this? The answer lies in an essential principle: knowledge, in and of itself, does not attract money. Its true value emerges only when it is organized, applied, and directed through concrete action plans, designed for the specific purpose of generating wealth. This crucial distinction has been overlooked by millions of people who mistakenly repeat the famous adage, "Knowledge is power." In reality, knowledge is only potential power. It becomes real power only when it is structured into defined strategies and oriented toward clear goals. Herein lies the great weakness of traditional educational systems. They don't teach their students how to use the knowledge they acquire in a practical way. The key to success, from theory to action. Knowledge organization. It's not enough to accumulate information. It needs to be structured into applicable systems. Specialized focus. Mastering a specific area allows you to offer valuable solutions and, therefore, generate wealth. Concrete action plans. Knowledge must be translated into practical, measurable steps. Defined objectives. Without a clear goal, the potential of knowledge is diluted. It's common for many people to make the mistake of assuming that because Henry Ford didn't have an extensive formal education, he wasn't truly educated. This assumption, however, reveals a profound misunderstanding of the true meaning of the word education. The word educated comes from the Latin word educo, which means to draw from within, to develop, to bring forth. It is not, therefore, simply a matter of accumulating encyclopedic information or knowledge, but of cultivating the mind so that one is capable of achieving any goal one sets for oneself, without violating the rights of others. A truly educated person is one who has trained his mental capacities to think, discern, act with his own judgment, and contribute constructively to his environment. The underrated entrepreneur. During World War I, a Chicago newspaper published a series of editorials in which, among other things, it called Henry Ford an ignorant pacifist. Ford, deeply offended by such statements, decided to file a defamation suit against the newspaper. When the case came to court, the newspaper's defense lawyers sought to justify their publications by bringing Henry Ford to the witness stand with the intention of publicly demonstrating that he lacked general knowledge and, therefore, could not be considered an educated man. To this end, they subjected him to a series of questions that had little to do with his business activities but sought to demonstrate his ignorance of historical and academic matters. Among the questions posed were, who was Benedict Arnold? And how many soldiers did the British send to the American colonies during the Rebellion of 1776? To the latter, Ford responded with serenity and wit. I don't know the exact number of soldiers the British sent, but I understand it was considerably larger than those who returned. The courtroom held its breath for a moment at the sharp, ironic response. However, seeing that the panel persisted with such questions, Ford, visibly tired of that line of attack, leaned forward, firmly addressing the lawyer questioning him, said, "If you really wanted to answer the question you just asked me, or any other of a similar nature, let me remind you that in my office I have a row of buttons, and by simply pressing the right one I can access, in a matter of seconds, the advice of experts who are deeply knowledgeable about any topic you wish to consult related to the business to which I have dedicated most of my life. So, tell me, why should I fill my mind with data that others have already mastered, when I can focus my energies on what really matters and surround myself with competent people for the rest?" That answer, far from being an evasive one, was a clear example of practical intelligence and business vision. Ford demonstrated, with simplicity and forcefulness, that the true value of a leader lies not only in the amount of information they store, but in their ability to unite talents, coordinate efforts, and focus their mind on what's essential. To master the transformation of desire into its monetary equivalent, it is essential to develop a deep understanding of the service, product, or professional area that will form the foundation of your prosperity. On this path of growth, you may encounter knowledge gaps that exceed your immediate capacity or availability. However, this limitation does not represent a definitive obstacle, as you can compensate for it through strategic synergy with your circle of masterminds. Building significant wealth is a process that demands real power, born of specialized knowledge applied intelligently, methodically, and effectively. It's important to note, however, that this expertise doesn't necessarily have to reside within you personally. Financial genius lies precisely in the ability to integrate and direct diverse talents, thus creating a system where collective knowledge becomes the engine of your success. Remember, great economic empires are built on pillars of practical wisdom, astute resource management, and, above all, the ability to orchestrate teams where each member contributes their unique talents. True fortune lies not only in what you know, but in how you mobilize and enhance what those who walk alongside you know. The above message should serve as a source of hope for anyone who, with a fervent ambition to prosper and achieve financial freedom, has not yet had the opportunity to acquire the traditional academic training that, at first glance, might be considered indispensable. Often, in our society, the lack of degrees or certificates is mistakenly associated with a supposed inability to succeed. As a result, many people carry a sense of inadequacy or insecurity, believing that, because they have not followed a conventional educational path, they are destined to settle for less. However, this belief is not only unfair, but also erroneous. True education goes far beyond the walls of a school or textbooks. A human being who possesses the ability to assemble and lead a team of brilliant minds, a true mastermind group, made up of people with specialized knowledge useful for wealth creation, demonstrates a type of intelligence and education that cannot be measured with diplomas. This capacity for leadership, strategic vision, and cooperation is a form of wisdom as valuable as any academic degree. Consider Thomas A. Edison, for example, who barely attended school for 3 months in his entire life. Despite this, he not only left a historic legacy of inventions and advancements, but also lived a successful and fulfilling life. Another notable example is Henry Ford, who never completed elementary school, but through determination, ingenuity, and hard work, transformed the automotive industry and amassed a considerable fortune. Both men demonstrate that knowledge can be acquired in many ways and that the key lies in knowing how to apply it, not just in where it was learned. Today, specialized knowledge is more accessible than ever. It's available in libraries, online courses, workshops, books, practical experiences, and, of course, through collaboration with others. In fact, one only has to look at the payrolls of many universities to understand that technical and academic knowledge can be contracted out, delegated, or integrated into multidisciplinary teams. What's really needed is initiative, a fervent desire to continually learn, and the intelligence to surround oneself with people who complement one's skills. So, if you haven't yet taken the traditional academic path, don't be discouraged. History is full of examples of men and women who built great empires without ever having to go through a conventional classroom. What makes the difference is determination, a positive attitude, the ability to adapt, and, above all, unwavering belief in yourself. You have everything you need to achieve it. Build a business that runs without you. Whether you're a solopreneur looking to start a small business or a business owner aspiring to create something marketable, your goal is the same: to build a business that runs smoothly, even in your absence. When you manage to operate your business autonomously, it becomes a valuable asset. This gives you options: take vacations, explore new hobbies, or simply enjoy greater freedom. As a business owner, I know what it means to dream of that independence. During my search for strategies to achieve it, I discovered the book, Create a Company You Can Sell: Building a Successful Business Without You by John Warrillow. Through the story of Alex Stapleton, an advertising agency owner, Warrillow shares valuable lessons. Alex went to Ted Gordon, a successful entrepreneur who had sold 4 companies. After listening to his complaints, dependent customers, underqualified staff, unstable income, Ted gave him some tough news. Your business has no value. You can't sell it. The reason? The business was completely dependent on Alex. If a potential buyer didn't see any guarantees that the company would function without the founder, they wouldn't pay for it. The key mistake: many entrepreneurs build businesses that revolve around themselves, leaving them trapped in an endless cycle of work. Top 5 tips for transforming your business. 1. Identify a scalable product. What projects are you really good at? A scalable product meets 3 criteria. Teachable: you can train others to produce it. Valuable: customers are willing to pay for it. Repeatable: generates recurring demand. Standardize the process in 5 steps. Vision: personification. Conceptual sketches. Black and white tests. Final design. 2. Specialize, don't generalize. Doing everything means needing specialists, which is expensive. Focus on a single service to improve your efficiency and stand out. Example: Southwest Airlines operates only Boeing 737 aircraft to simplify maintenance and training. 3. Diversify your customer base. Ted warned, if MNY Bank represents 40% of your revenue, no buyer will want that risk. The goal: no client should contribute more than 10 to 15% of the revenue. Alex began promoting his new logo service by sending emails to existing clients. Out of 24 contacts, he managed to secure 6 meetings and 1 sale. 4. Turn your service into a product. A service company depends on talented people. A product company depends on a replicable process. By standardizing logo design, Alex stopped customizing each project and began selling a unique approach. 5. Make the business independent of you. If you are indispensable, the business is worthless. Alex needed to train his team to handle every step of the process. The goal: to make the agency work without his constant intervention. Productivity is one of the fundamental pillars on which the success of any business is built. It's not simply about doing more in less time, but rather about ensuring that every resource, human, technological, financial, and time, generates the maximum possible value. The importance of productivity in a business environment transcends operational efficiency. It directly affects profitability, competitiveness, sustainability, and the capacity for long-term growth. In an increasingly competitive market, where margins for error are minimal and speed of response is key, productivity allows companies to stay ahead. A productive business can adapt more quickly to environmental changes, launch products or services more quickly, respond to customer needs efficiently, and seize opportunities before the competition. In this sense, productivity is not only an advantage, but a strategic necessity for survival and prosperity. From an internal perspective, productivity contributes to improved employee morale and engagement. When processes are well-defined, the right tools are available, and goals are clear, employees feel that their time and effort translate into concrete results. This reduces frustration, minimizes emotional exhaustion, and promotes a high-performance culture. A motivated and productive team is much more than the sum of individual talents. It is a synergistic force capable of innovating, solving problems, and overcoming challenges with creativity and determination. Furthermore, high productivity allows for the optimization of operating costs. By eliminating waste, improving workflows, and reducing unnecessary tasks, a leaner cost structure is achieved, improving profit margins. This is especially crucial in times of economic uncertainty or crisis, when efficiency can mean the difference between survival and extinction. The most productive companies are also those that can reinvest their profits in research, development, and expansion, completing a virtuous cycle of constant growth. The impact of productivity on customer satisfaction should not be underestimated. When a company delivers quality products or services in less time and at a lower cost, it is better positioned to meet and exceed consumer expectations. Speed, accuracy, and consistency translate into trust, loyalty, and a good reputation. In a world where customer experience is a key differentiator, productivity becomes a loyalty tool as powerful as any marketing campaign. Productivity also has a technological and innovation dimension. Companies that invest in automation, digitalization, and continuous process improvement achieve higher overall performance. But technology alone doesn't guarantee results. It's the intelligent integration of people, processes, and tools that triggers a real increase in productivity. Therefore, it's vital to cultivate a mindset of continuous improvement and effective leadership that motivates teams to always look for a better, faster, or more efficient way of doing things. Even from a social and macroeconomic perspective, business productivity has a multiplier effect. More productive companies generate more quality jobs, pay higher wages, contribute higher taxes, and play a key role in the economic development of their communities. They are drivers of innovation, progress, and well-being. The importance of productivity also extends to leadership and decision-making within the business. Productive leadership isn't simply one that demands more results, but rather one that knows how to set priorities, delegate intelligently, manage resources wisely, and motivate their team to achieve common goals. Effective leaders understand that productivity isn't imposed, it's built. Therefore, they design work environments in which clarity, trust, and fluid communication foster optimal performance. Decision-making is also influenced by a company's level of productivity. When data is generated accurately and on time thanks to efficient processes, decisions are more informed and less intuitive. Bottlenecks, points for improvement, and growth opportunities can be identified more accurately. Furthermore, a productive company can better plan for its future, budget more realistically, allocate resources strategically, and take calculated risks. All of this strengthens the company's short-dash, medium-dash, and long-term planning capacity. Another key aspect is the ability to scale the business. Without a solid foundation of productivity, any attempt at growth can become chaotic. More customers, more employees, or more products can create chaos if processes aren't standardized or there isn't a flexible and efficient structure. On the other hand, when a company has developed a culture of productivity, growth is not only possible, but desirable. It becomes a natural extension of what is already done well. It's like building on solid foundations. You can grow tall without fear of the structure collapsing. Likewise, productivity fosters a culture of accountability and results. In an organization where the focus is on performance and continuous improvement, every team member understands the value of their contribution. Work patterns based solely on schedules or repetitive tasks are broken, and the achievement of measurable goals is prioritized. This transforms the work environment. Constant monitoring is replaced by trust in results. Control is transformed into commitment. And with this, not only efficiency improves, but also the quality of work life. It's important to note that being productive doesn't mean working more hours, but rather working better. An obsession with hyperactivity can lead to burnout, poor quality, and stagnation. True productivity involves balance between speed and quality, between effort and rest, between demand and recognition. Businesses that understand this promote more humane work models, where creativity, well-being, and innovation mutually enhance each other. In modern business, productivity is also linked to sustainability. More efficient processes consume fewer resources, generate less waste, and reduce environmental impact. Thus, a productive company is not only profitable, but also responsible. In a world increasingly aware of the effects of climate change and the urgency of adopting sustainable practices, productivity can be a powerful ally of ecological and social commitment. Finally, we must not forget that productivity is a continuous process, never a static state. Technologies change, market expectations evolve, and what is efficient today may not be tomorrow. Therefore, productivity must be understood as a philosophy of constant improvement, of critical review of what is done, of openness to change. The most successful companies are those that never settle, that turn productivity into a habit, a culture shared by all their members. Ultimately, productivity is the heart of a successful business. Operational efficiency, team motivation, customer satisfaction, financial profitability, innovation capacity, and long-term sustainability depend on it. It's not just a matter of numbers. It's about vision, strategy, and humanity. Investing in productivity means investing in a solid, competitive, and constantly evolving future.